please accelerate from the coffee break because we're ready to go with the second half of our afternoon and with the second panel at the World Manufacturing Forum, the panel Influx of Technology, Technological Tipping Point for Competitive Manufacturing. In terms of tipping points, as we discussed in the first part of the afternoon, well, everything is accelerating. And when it comes to technology, the combination of new disrupting technology like Gen AI, for example, everyone, that's the talk of the town day in, day out. But also the combination of this is happening at an incredible velocity. How can manufacturing adapt and leverage for its competitiveness of the future from all of this? This might be a positive tipping point after we heard some critical tipping points. We'll discuss this with a terrific lineup of very experienced and global speakers. Let me start with Dr. Shen Xie, Chief Digital Officer at Foxconn. Welcome and thanks for joining us. Let's a round of applause to our speakers. Olaf Pannenbecker, his chairman at the European Factories of the Future Research Association. Welcome, Olaf, and Thorsten Furst. Professor Furst is mass manufacturing professor and top researcher at the University of South Carolina. All right, here we go. Thank you. All of you take a seat. So, Dr. Xie, let me start with you because Foxconn needs no introduction. Is the largest manufacturer, contract manufacturer in the world, present in many different countries. First of all, can you position just a brief identikit of Foxconn today?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I think a lot of people know the name Foxconn. But still, people don't understand what we are doing right now. Actually, we are, as Andrea mentioned, we might be the largest manufacturer in the world, especially in the consumer electronics and the ICT industry. We make products for our customers all over the world. And you know the brands, you know Apple, you know Cisco, you know HP. A lot of things we made. I think the growth of the company also goes with the ICT industry. When they see the same right now, we are working on all the panels, all the communications, all the stuff is all ICT industry. Right now, we have a booming in the server industry, especially when you mention the generative AI. You need to use the GPUs. You need to use the AI server. We have a booming business in the server business right now. So you see we have very strong performance in our annual reports. Also, right now, we have a new business, which is EV. People talk a lot. We make components. We make mechanical parts. We also make an assembly service. We call it a CDMS, Contract Design Manufacturing Service, for our customers to make EV in different countries' locations. So right now, you can see for the group, we have two major business. One is SAT and the EMS. Another is the EV business. So that's why we need to use a unified platform to do the manufacturing, to provide a service, including our supply chains, our manufacturing technologies, and the future, maybe the AIs we can use for our facilities.
Absolutely. So you're, a great place to understand how to innovate, because you are forced to innovate by your clients that innovate. Not just that, also geopolitics has changed the map of your location. So you have to be very fast and effective, especially because the margins are under pressure everywhere. So how do you use new technology or the combination of technology? We know that this new generation of robotics, for example, there's a lot of AI into this. Can you give us an idea of how you do it?
Yeah, I think technology innovations is always the core in our DNA. When we start our business, we say, we need to provide the best of the best service to our customers. So we care about the speed, which is the efficiency of production. Also, we care about the quality, right? And to make sure the products from your factory is reliable. And most importantly, we also need to care about the cost, which is the price, right? If you want to win the business, you need to control the cost. So if you think about the triangles here, it's always challenging for us how we can improve. Because you see, every year we need to do cost down for our customers. also in different locations. So go back to 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, when we start Industrial 4.0, we see there's a lot of opportunities for us. So we see we need to do first is robots and automation. So we spend a lot of money to the automation and the robotics. Also, we have our own brands of robots. We use a lot of robots to replace workers in different sites and different manufacturing scenarios. We see this is really helpful. But when you do this in one location, especially in mainland China, we have a biggest operation. Right now, we have a challenge. You see the geopolitics, you see a lot of things. We need to set up the place, manufacturing sites in different locations. Mexico, in India, we see the challenge. You do not have enough engineers in different locations to do automation. You don't have enough engineers to operate the system. So that's why, at this stage, we invest more and more in platform and digital technology to make sure the engineers with not very high level of knowledge can operate the machines, can make manufacturing better, and how we can use AI to do so. This is the goal right now for us. So we use a lot of effort to learn about how Gen AI can help. And we work with NVIDIA closely and to develop models to operate the factory, the automation, robots, and the people, and improve the supply chain.
Absolutely. So that's terrific to understand, given also the type of clients you do have, like Apple, and you were mentioning NVIDIA, and you were working also with Siemens in terms of automating new plants. But Olaf Pannenbecker, let's move also closer to Europe, where we have some industries, like, for example, automotive, that are suffering for many reasons. We were mentioning transition. We will discuss later on the workforce, aging workforce and demographic. What are the main trends when it comes to technology and how to combine new technologies together to become more efficient and to respond to these challenges?
Yes, so first of all, let me thank you for being here. It's really a great honor for me to. I'm wearing two hats. The one is EFRA chairman. EFRA is a non-profit organization based in Brussels and is preparing the European Commission for the next framework program in order to provide subventions for projects that do research on the factories of the future. And we have a whole set of board members also here, so maybe you can look around and ask a bit. On the other side, it's my second hat today. I'm from Continental Automotive. I'm based in Germany. Apparently, I'm German. And of course, we do a lot of manufacturing as well. We have more than 95% of our sales being driven out of parts that we produce for the automotive industry. It's not the tires, it's the electronics. And in electronics, there's, of course, a lot of varieties, and there is technological transformation happening right now. We are distributed over several countries in the world. We have 60 plants, and one of the main challenges for my team working centrally is to synchronize the activities that are happening in the plants. So it's not that we go for local optimization, it is that we want to have same equipment, similar technologies, aligned, synchronized with each other. So we have plants that work on same technologies and work with the same set of data. So when we come to the artificial intelligence, for instance, as we are doing a lot of electronic production, it's a big advantage for us to have global tools using global cloud computing in order to synchronize our plants and use all experiences at the same time to provide a better visual system for PCBs, for instance, which we have recently done, in order to have a higher level of quality in the inspection of PCBs, right? So that's one of the main challenges that we are currently having. I'm following the discussion right now as well on the labor, and I think skilled labor is a second big challenge that we have. And when it comes to tipping point, it could actually make a difference. First, of course, it's the challenge for the management to introduce technologies in the same way as we are lacking people, so that we do not have too many people or too few people for our production. So that's the usual balance that we need to take. But the second thing is that you always need to upskill your people. And if you miss to do so, and you're introducing new technologies without the people behind being able to a broader scale to also run those new technologies, you will fail. Yeah, you will fail, and we have singular cases where we learned about this. So the speed of introducing new technologies have to be aligned with the speed of upskilling people, which, that's quite human, takes the time. Huh? So that's one of the challenges that we have.
Absolutely. Thomson, first, what's your take on these challenges, and how's technology, what's the real edge today when we talk about this?
Well, I have the disadvantage now going after these two colleagues who mentioned two of the main things that I would like to mention too, skilled labor and AI. And maybe I take it a little bit in a discussion here and would like to see your perspective on that. But especially on AI, with generative AI and LLMs being everywhere, right? The solution to everything or the doom of everything. We just had a big labor strike in the US in the eastern ports and the union said, hey, we want more money. Well, that's understandable. And we don't want any automation or AI, which is not acceptable, right? And my take on TV was actually to say, hey, use that negotiation power you have right now to demand retraining, upskilling for new tasks.
That happened in Hollywood 2 years ago, and it was kind of a different sector, but the team was the same.
You won't stop it. So with LLMs in manufacturing, at least maybe you can chime in, my perspective is that on the shop floor, it's very hard to apply them. First of all, you have to expose some of your competitive data that you don't want to do, right? You don't want to upload any of your drawings or secret sauce or materials. And on the other side, you need to understand what the LLM actually does and how it puts out the solution or the forecast, right? However, I think the tipping point here is mainly that everybody understands AI is here and will develop, and it develops rapidly in business processes and also in technological processes. So they are engaged. They think like, hey, I have to understand that, I have to invest in that. So that's one part. And then the other part is a lot of the AI applications in especially small and medium-sized companies, there's a big threshold on connectivity of machine tools to get the data to train machine learning models and supervised or unsupervised and other AI applications. And there's the skilled labor that's missing, that you don't have enough engineers that actually can develop a dedicated, unique solution for a problem, right? So I think that's where LLMs have a huge opportunity to lower that barrier to build, traditional ML models for certain processes, because that threshold is a big disincentive.
Dr. Shi, how do you look at that at Foxconn? The combination of AI on one hand, the rise of AI, how you use it, and skilled labor force. You're present in so many different markets with so many different situations.
Yes, I think thanks for the very insightful sharing. For us, I think we see it from two ways. One way is we actually already got benefits from AI. As I mentioned, we have a lot of business in AI server. That is a huge opportunity for us for the growth. Always Apple is big right now. NVIDIA is really big. Also, we have Dell really big. That is AI server opportunities. So we see that is already a huge market for us. That business for the cloud service providers, they keep buying all the servers to provide their capabilities for their customers for AI. So that is one thing very important. So we can see that is an opportunity for us, because when they invest more and more, they will lower the price of using AI and the barrier and to use AI, make it simple, make it easier, and make it cheaper. So we have the opportunity to use AI capabilities in our factory. Another way is we have a lot of data, we have a lot of scenarios, and we work with machine builders, system integrators, and a lot of people working in the factory, in the environment. But before, all the system, all the organization is built on the old fashion. I mean, how you separate your work, research engineers, mechanical engineer, design engineer, electrical engineer, operations, warehouse, supply chain, all this is all design. But think about this. If you have all the data, all the operations, all the system running on the cloud, and you have the generative AI assistant to help you to make a judgment, to monitor the performance of the operation, that is very, very helpful for us for the huge operations without a lot of changes.
Is
So
that already reality in your
Yes.
plans?
That's why we work with, you see the news, we just finished our tech day in Taipei last week. So we are building a supercomputer center together with NVIDIA. That is very tremendous computing powers. And we see the softwares, we see the capability. Also, one more thing important, Jensen Huang, he mentioned a lot, tokenization. How you can combine your knowledge with all the models, you need to make it tokenized. That is the secret only for yourself. So you can develop your own models based on your data, transfer to the tokens. The tokens is used for the model training. So you can define your specific models for different scenarios, but they can share the same computing power capability infrastructures. So, but the challenge is it's very expensive, as you mentioned. You need to have the infrastructure by yourself. You need to have very specific people to do the model training, also train the people to use the model. That circle is very expensive right now, but eventually, the price of to use the model went down a lot, and a lot of people will use that. But for us, as a leading manufacturing suppliers for the world, as you mentioned at the very beginning, our customers, they are very eager to see we use the new tech to solve the old problems, to improve our efficiency and transfer the supply chains.
Is this kind of innovation also helping your competitiveness? How do you practice this?
Well, it's actually happening. It's a wonderful example, but it does also show to all of us that different maturity level where different companies, different sectors are currently at. I mean, I understand you are focused on manufacturing, no doubt about, and with this, customers of yours would expect highest level of the use of everything what is new in manufacturing. We come more from the traditional industry. Automotive is very reluctant with anything changing. We are now forced to do a transformation process. And we, of course, have legacy systems that are hindering us and give a strong resistance towards everything what's possible, right? So, and then we have smaller industries, and now I'm changing hat again, back to EFRA, representing some of the companies that we are working with as our members. They are small and medium-sized enterprises that cannot afford all this at the same time. So they are not strong enough in order to have everything up to the latest level of technology. And I think that's important that we are acknowledging at the level where we are standing right now and take step by step, however, also skip some levels in order to catch up, right? And to find the right concept for this. In particular, for that, we have one working group within EFRA that is taking care about the human-centric approach. So designing a manufacturing environment where when everything is getting automized, still people need to be integrated into the environment of the production, right? And there's research work to be done because there's not one recipe helping all different type of companies, right?
Professor Wurst, this is setting an all new level of competition among companies. Those who are on the track on the right side of the tipping point, as Professor Marketaish was saying this afternoon, can benefit from this, but there's a risk for other companies to miss the competition. And how do you see the evolution and the main steps that companies, also small and medium companies, as Italian, German company, can do today?
Well, two things. Like you mentioned competition, and I think that's something I think needs to be added to this discussion. now we're talking about technology tipping points, right, or technological tipping points. But we can't see them without the bigger context, right? Like a lot of these technological innovations are also driven by outside forces. Let's say geopolitical conflict or upcoming geopolitical conflict and reshoring of core industries. And when we think of high-wage countries that might not have capabilities in a certain space because they, didn't support them in the past as much as they should have, and trying to bring them back, they need to engage in technology because otherwise it will not happen, right? It's not competitive on the global marketplace. So there's no question that they have to engage in these technologies, big, small, medium-sized companies. And that's where the supply chain or supply network, how I like to call it, comes into play. The OEMs or the final node of the network that is customer-facing, they normally are the bigger company, right? And they orchestrate their supply network 1, 2, 3 tiers down the line. And they have the responsibility, and I think Schneider put that very nicely in the previous panel, they take that responsibility seriously to educate their supply chain participants. And they have to do more of it, right? And there has to be some form of risk and cost sharing in the future. Who benefits from an implementation of a new technology? Is it the node that benefits, or is it the OEM that benefits? Or ideally both, right? Can we figure out a mechanism that cost, benefits, and value is shared more evenly and more fairly within a network to compete against other networks, right? It's a global competition.
Absolutely. There's plenty of questions already coming from the audience. Dr. Shi, a couple of questions for you. The first one is about the range of technologies you are using. You mentioned AI. The question from one colleague, industrialist from the audience is there any other emerging or already maturing technology that you think it's relevant to combine with AI? And the second question always for you is how to approach the workforce when you introduce a new technology that can sound frightening for the workers.
Yeah, I think for our industry, our business start from very low and the fundamental manufacturing, die in the mold. Also, we make enclosures, we make a PCBA. Also, we make assembly and testing. AI pretty much used for all the equipments, operations and management. That's a very good tool, but we still need to care about materials. Manufacturing capabilities, right? For example, you see the phone. Before the iPhone, people use all the enclosures is plastic. Only iPhone, they start to use metals for the enclosure. Also the glasses for the back. If you want to use the metal enclosures, you need to use CNCs. So at that time, we studied a lot how to use CNCs to work faster for all the manufacturing needs. For the new tech, it's always driven by the requirements. So we can see the new tech including maybe how you can make the server easier and the thermal stuff, right? We're also working on that. We're also working on the next generation of 3D printing of the metals to make the products easier instead of cutting all the metals. So we have 2 tracks. One is for operation. We use that AI to improve the equipment and operations and the supply chain. Another track is manufacturing tech, including all the PCBA, how you make the PCBA, how you make semiconductors, how you make your CNC machines better, how you make all the die and mold better. That is also a bunch of new techs coming. So that's why we want to use all the things we have from ICT and consumer electronics to make EVs. You see all the batteries. We also make batteries. We can make it better because we have experience to make all the similar products in ICT. So that kind of manufacturing tech is all under our umbrella. We need to track to use.
All right, Olive Pannebecker, we already discussed this, but it was 2011 when Germany launched the definition of Industry 4.0. And at that time, we understood that plants and manufacturing was creating more data than products. And so the management of data today in factories and manufacturing is crucial. But it also opens a territory to hacker, and cybersecurity is becoming more and more relevant, also in the manufacturing space. How do you handle this, and how do you see the relevance of data as an asset of companies, also in the supply chain management?
So it's a very interesting point, and you're talking to the right person, because last year, in fact, we got hit by a severe attack where Continental has been in press media for having a data leakage, and that was as a consequence of a hacker attack, right? So making the systems more safe, having the right cybersecurity concepts in place, and avoiding that even internally we would have possibilities to enter our internal networks is a challenge. And it has a lot to do with the behavior of people. So for instance, in our production, you would not find an open USB slot nowhere, because everything is connected, and if you want to transfer software, you are not allowed to use any USB stick, because that's the entry port for easily having a viruses or whatever else you want. And viruses are actually one of the easiest ones. So pulling data away, it's another topic. So with everything what we are doing in order to connect the machine data, to connect the process data, we always have to make sure that it runs in internal systems, that there is certain emergency concepts, firewall systems in place. IT security has spent a lot of effort in there to do this. But here's a threat. And I don't know how sensitive you are on costs in your company. Automotive typically is very cost sensitive. And what we do is the wrong thing. We cut IT as much as we can because IT has become too expensive. And the opposite we should do. IT is becoming more and more important, and IT should actually replace systems where we have inefficiencies because of too much manual work. Right? So we should have initiatives that drive generative AI, that drive cybersecurity concepts, that should drive the use of data, even within a global manufacturing network, if you're a global player, in order to make this safe and most efficient. Right? So it's difficult to get this message because there also need to be a return on investment in less than 12 months. So that's a natural obstacle that we have to overcome.
Dr. Shi, you mentioned you are creating a supercomputer with NVIDIA, but when it comes to cybersecurity, what's your standard? How would you approach this?
Yeah, that happens. So before we start, we have a discussion. We say this. If you want to use a central capability to do all the work, you take all the risk for this.
Yes.
Right. But that is something we cannot because of a difficult, we are now moving forward. You see the trend, people use cloud. We see at beginning 10 years ago, when you say, oh, you use cloud for your data operations, people say, no, I don't use cloud. But if you see right now, you see the big names, all the manufacturers in the US, they use a cloud service, right? Also, you can see we also use a cloud service from Azure, from AWS. It's similar. If you use cloud service, similar use the computational powers in the central hub. So you need to have a way to make a control. I mean, cybersecurity always have a very good problem to have very good way to solve the problem. But we care about more is how we control the models. That is very important for us. That is maybe the expertise we have to operate the factory, operate the machines. If that got hacked and got by others, that is very valuable to us. We need to care about how to keep the model and make it more secret.
Torsten Wurst, this is a revolution underway, and the velocity, the rapidity of this change is impressive. Let me just tell you, NVIDIA that was mentioned, before the launch of ChatGPT had the market cap of 400 billion in the US. In 2 years, basically, it went up to 3 trillion dollars. So the velocity of how the market are pricing this is incredible. And the question for you connected with this is, are we living in a tipping point in a way that if we do not change now, there's a risk for companies to go out of business, Professor?
Yes. So, and that is a very unsatisfactory answer, I guess, but that's my belief. Like, you need to compete or you will die, right? Like, the company will not be able to compete on that global marketplace the marketplace of ideas that we're competing in right now. The share, the value of the shares, I guess that's a lot of psychology, but when we really think of how companies will compete in the future, it's efficiency and resiliency, and I guess that's where AI and access to skilled labor comes into play. And when you're on the forefront and you are innovative and you basically invest in IT to also have, you know, that 10% of labor force available when you need them because they're skilled, they know your processes, they have time to play around with new tools, then you can react and be proactive about new technologies and outcompete your competition, period.
Dr. Schied, there's a question for you, and they're asking, how do you see the partnership between industry and research for uptaking new and challenging technology, and also cooperation with universities, for example, research center, and so on?
Yeah, actually, I came from IUCRC Center, right? I do a lot of research before. I checked my Facebook like 10 years ago. I'm here in Milan, work with Arston to do the models training and the experiments. That is a typical IUCRC stuff. It's a industry, university, corporation project. But I think the most important thing is the corporate, like us, need to be more open than before. Right now, we are more open than before. You need to make sure you have a specific scenarios. You need to make sure you have the data set and make sure you have a problem definition for the universities. They can help you to improve, modify the models. That is the work they can do. If you say, oh, you need to start from the data acquisition first, you need to learn about the mechanical stuff for them. They just cannot. If they are computer science, they're just working on the models, to train the models, help you to improve the performance. It's like a challenge, right? It's like that way. If we can do that, the corporate digitize themselves already, and the corporate has the goal to be more open, platformed to operate with all the universities, all the research institutes. I think we have more and more result we can use for the factory level. That can be the universities is here, companies here. We need a layer. That layer is engineering capabilities. So we need to create an environment for the people to do the work. So if you see all the internet companies, you see Google, you see Amazon, you see NVIDIA, a lot interesting, very important work is come from university because they are open. They have all the materials, they have all the data, they have all the resources for the young people, for the professors to use. But for manufacturing, we may do not before. But right now we see if we have the capability, we have the platform, we are willing to share and to gain from others. That is quite important for us.
Olaf Pannebecker, we discussed many times at the World Manufacturing Forum in the past the fact that innovation do not depend just on the manufacturers, but on the ecosystem. We just mentioned research center, university, technology transfer. But there's an interesting question for you, which is how effective can European and national policies support technological competitiveness, or the risk is that all the government decisions will be risking to lag behind market dynamics?
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good question. But let me first add one little thing to that. Talking to the universities, you do not have to have only bilateral cooperation. You can also use projects like, for instance, from EFRA or from European Commission in order to exchange your experiences and work together. That is also a possibility to get linked or get connected to the research capacities. Okay, so to the other question, I mean, it's a very important thing that in companies you will have dedicated people with responsibility, or maybe even with management attention, to look specifically to what innovation is currently happening in the market. We call them innovation scouts, technology scouts. It's applying not only to manufacturing technologies, it would also apply to what are the others doing, what are the other suppliers doing, what are the environment service suppliers currently offering. So if we are not continuously sending people to conferences, to fairs, to be in what's happening right now in the market, then you get isolated. I mean, it's a very general, but a very concrete recommendation at that point. So you're missing the train, yeah, sooner or later. I think that's an important topic.
Yeah,
and that also has to do with providing the budget from the companies for exactly those type of activities. I mean, our plants even, they have had Industry 4.0 labs in the plant. I mean, the plant should do production as most efficient as possible, but they were allowed to have a bunch of 10 people doing Industry 4.0 projects, just to play around with it. If you don't do this, then you're missing the innovation power of a plant.
Absolutely. Thorsten was the competition we were mentioning before in facing these rapid changes in technology. It's not just individually by manufacturers to maybe gain some market share, but it's continental platforms. They're fighting together for the leadership. You know, the US with the Inflation Reduction Act and all the subsidies to companies that want to innovate in some sectors, including the green one. Here in Europe, I was mentioning before, the Net Zero Industry Act, but also the Green Deal. How do you see this looking ahead?
Well, one little comment on the data and AI with industry, university collaboration. While I agree that it's a very good starting point to share a data set to optimize the model, I disagree in the extent that that a collaboration can be, because I believe that leaves out a lot of the innovation that is needed to really apply AI effectively on the shop floor, because the connectivity fabric is a big problem and the data quality, and that has a big influence on the model itself later on. And I think when we can integrate as full partners, there's a lot of potential that is unused at this point, because it is difficult, right? And there need to be like levers in place that allow to finance stuff like that, right? That students go to a company for 6 months and work on the shop floor, learn the process, become subject matter experts to be able to do that hard work, right? That right out of the school they are not able to do. But I guess that's a little daydreaming, right? To come back to that. So coming to the funding kind of situation, I guess that is a problem that every university and probably all companies also agree we need more. But that's easier said than done, because that value has to be generated. So I think having meaningful relationships where the company invests cost share or time or access, the universities get a share from mechanisms like EFRA or in the US NSF or Department of Energy to subsidize these projects. Are very effective ways of both training the next generation, because the students that work on these projects will be very capable to drive innovation, and on the other side for the company to do projects that they might not have the budget or time by themselves at this point, right? And I think that should be the lever that politics should intervene and stay away from too many mandates, because the free market is probably the most effective tool we have.
Absolutely. It's time for your takeaways. Just a couple of questions, Dr. Shi, from the audience. The first one is about energy, because they're asking you if AI, and you mentioned supercomputers and data centers, continue to absorb more and more energy. How do you see the solution, and how do you at Foxconn are, practicing this challenge? And the other one is a question on critical minerals shortages, and how are you playing this into your, production cycle?
Yeah, start from the second question. It's always a challenge for the supply chains, right? It depends on the shortage is always related to the price. At the beginning of the pandemic, we also have the shortage for semiconductors. So we always have this challenge. It's all about price. So we have a system to maybe can do the predictions. We can do the storage. We can do the warehouse at beginning. But still, we always have the challenge for that. We just cannot solve by ourselves for that one. But in terms of energy, just have our announcement with all the partners. Like you see, if you go back to see on the website, we have that for our Tech Day. We work with Bill Gates' team, Breakthrough Energy. They say they can have green energies. They have the storage of the energies for the data centers. But I think that is not the ultimate solution. People are trying to find a way to solve the problems of the energy, but still working on that. We are trying really hard to get a green energy. It's also the requirement of the sustainable supply chains. But still, I think it's a challenge problem for all the countries. Try to build all the AI centers there. People are figuring out how to do that right now.
Olaf Pannebecker, the final question for you is on the impact of all of this on SMEs, because you are both very large companies, but here in the audience and in general in Europe, there's more SMEs than large corporations. How can they play this game in terms also of the cost effectiveness of all of these technologies on their competitiveness?
So my personal view on this is that there is plenty of solutions available when it comes to Industry 4.0 solutions or whatever deals with digitalization in production. It's more solutions available in the market than you have problems. It's a selection problem that is actually is present for the SMEs. So for me, an SME, I would recommend to be very careful with exactly describing what they want to achieve in the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, and then go with an IT infrastructure that is tailor-made for their production. And there's a lot of solutions out there. Just don't buy the first one, buy the one that matches the best to your needs.
Very practical, very clear. Yeah. Professor Wust, your final takeaway?
Wonderful, because I love talking about SMEs. And I think we have to distinguish between SMEs that are technology capable and others that are purely surviving and producing, right? And I think it's a resource problem, a resource allocation problem, that there are solutions that are very low cost, but it still needs resources. It needs human resources or somebody taking Python and programming the solution for that problem. And that's where SMEs often struggle because they're so busy to get operations running.
All right, fantastic. Dr. Shi, you mentioned your Tech Week. What was the biggest news that came out of your latest meeting?
I think we are transforming from a manufacturing service company to a platform solution provider. We need to make it ourselves more agile, more flexible, and more AI for the future. Yep.
That's not a small news. Thank you again, Dr. Shi. Thanks, Olaf Pannebecker and Professor Thorsten Wust. Thank you for joining us at the World Manufacturing Forum. Our third panel is dedicated to the demographic cliff, societal tipping points for manufacturing workforce, with José Roberto Favilla, who's director at Global Industry 4.0 leader at IBM Corporation, and Vanessa Wainwright, founder of Abu Limited, and John Stare, professor and head of division at the Chalmers University of Technology. And I remind you that, yes, as you saw, we are trying to keep it interactive as much as possible, so continue to ask your questions. And now we're discussing demographic. We already mentioned as the workforce is changing due to, on one hand, aging population, on the other hand, on what they call the demographic winter. And it's kind of a way of defining, because initially we know that we are living a demographic crisis, for example. And I would like to start with José Roberto Favilla to understand how do you see this transformation and how companies can react, given the fact that we just talked about the impact of technologies, for example, AI, generative AI, right, as a way to match with some of these demographic challenges.
Sure. I think we heard a lot about Industry 4.0, and I think we are in the middle of this digital transformation that's happening as part of the Industry 4.0. But I want to highlight one point about, especially in the European Union, the idea of Industry 5.0. We heard a lot that we're still in the middle of 4.0, why you're talking about 5. But I think the 5.0 brings a very interesting angle. focus on the worker-centric processes and how the new worker is going to be leveraging on the advanced technologies to drive these things. Of course, over and above the sustainability, the impact on the society, etc., is a very interesting angle on Industry 5.0, right? And as you go through this transformation, I think we heard a lot about a lot of technologies that are out there. The technologies have matured over time, but especially now, AI is getting a center stage given what's happening in the technology itself. For example, before, to build a machine learning model was a very time-intensive, a lot of work, and the models have to do models for a given KPI, for a given process in a given manufacturing. So in other words, they were not scalable. Right? So with Gen AI now, we are in another tipping point of the technology. Because with Gen AI, we can build the models much faster at scale as well. But on the other side, I think we are learning a lot about Gen AI. Because very common, we talk about these large language models that we are out there, et cetera. And this is not necessarily applicable for the manufacturing, the way they are, right? We are talking about different data modalities in manufacturing. One is about, the sensor data coming from the IoT sensors. We call this time series data. Can we have a model capable of dealing with time series data? That's very, very important to manufacturing. The other one is about images. How can we have a model recognize images? How can we detect if a problem is a quality problem in the product, et cetera? And the other one is about understanding the nomenclature in manufacturing. As you know, in manufacturing, we talk about piping and instrumentation diagrams, depending on the industry, talking about PLCs, DCS, et cetera, failure mode and event analysis. So all of these are pieces of the puzzle that we needed to somehow understand in order to apply Gen AI in manufacturing. Right? So again, another point is about not necessarily the large models are the ones the solution for the problem. We heard about how energy intensive those models are. So we believe the right approach in terms of small models that can do a better job or as good a job as the large language models can do is a better approach. That's one angle, right? So we believe again, we are in a tipping point about applying Gen AI. Let me give you a few examples to make this very concrete as well. We have been working with one of the industrial machinery manufacturing in Europe, right, in redesigning how we can use Gen AI to completely define the way they do the maintenance of their products. Imagine a situation where now we have data coming from a machine, this IoT sensor data. You feed this data into a Gen AI model specialized to understand if a given problem is going to happen with this machine, first of all. Not only identify potential failure, but analyze the criticality, how fast I have to go and fix the machine. That's one point. The second one out that we have a view that we have to do either a very quick action, because it could be a safety exposure, or have a couple of weeks to perform the task. We need to understand what exactly is happening with the equipment itself. The second angle now is that this AI agents that we build can open a work order into the maintenance system by itself. Right now we have a work order with its severity, and then comes another AI agent to figure out what's the best time to do the repair, looking at the availability of the technician, look at the availability of the parts, and look at the considerations for the production to minimize the disruption to production, right? And then whenever it comes to the maintenance technician to perform the work, another AI agent can help them, support the person in making sure that the diagnostic is done precisely to fix the problem the first time. Right? So get this one, right? And then you have another AI agent that can look at the inventory, spare parts inventory. As you can see, you have a number of AI agents supporting, redefining the way we do maintenance in a factory, for example, right? The second angle is about, we have many processes in manufacturing that are very energy intensive. One example is the work we are doing with a company in India. It's a steel company focused on what we call blast furnace. It's a continuous process to provide to produce the hot metal. And it's very critical to keep the metal temperature in a given range, and the silicon and several other variables. So the technician today sits in a control room, looking at a number of screens, and make an action more on a reactive mode. So the AI model now can predict what's going to happen a few hours from now and provide guidance to the person how to optimize the set points of the machine to avoid that condition to happen. And we can do this in quality as well, doing a lot of work in applying Gen AI in quality, etc. But those are concrete examples on how Gen AI can help the people in the factory to perform their job better.
Absolutely. So technology will, in a way or another, will help handle this, or could also hurt on other ways. Professor Stare, we know that demographic is changing also the competitive landscape globally, because there's a divide. There are countries that are rich in terms of youth. For example, let's take India, the demographic divide. The average age is 28.2. In Italy, just to give you an idea, is 49, just to give you an idea. So there are countries in India, 12 million youngs every year get into the job market, and the answer of India is more manufacturing jobs. So they're talking about a manufacturing renaissance. And in other countries like Italy, we do have a serious problems. We'll talk skills gap, but there's also demographic effect. So how do you see the combination of technology and the answer that robotics, AI, as we mentioned, can give to help the countries that are lagging in terms of demographic to get to the level of growth, which is the target?
Thank you, and I'm really agreeing with the use of automation and Gen AI and different kinds of cognitive automation that you were talking about. And I agree also with the demographics chart. If you look at the Italian landscape, for example, in this year, we have almost 1 million people who are 60 years old in Italy. But there are only two in the group. The 1-year-old is only 400,000. And in the 18-year group, there is only 500,000. So there's only half as many people entering the job market that are exiting the job market. So that's quite serious. So I think that we need all
serious. Let me tell you, I'm a boomer. I'm looking at retirement sooner or later, but it's not going to happen if the demographic goes this way.
Now we are looking at the same kind of figures at this Italian diaspora, the Emigrazione Italia, almost the same figures, leaving Italy in a sense. So therefore, this looks very different in other countries. If you look at Nigeria, they have a population pyramid, and Nigeria will overtake the US in 2040 when it comes to the number of people. India also has no problem with this, so they can choose between automation and not automation, but regions like Europe, China, even the US need to have the automation in order to survive, I think.
Absolutely. So let me go to Vanessa Wainwright, because, I was mentioning skill gap. And when we interview entrepreneurs and managers, the skill gap is priority number one, because they struggle to find the right people for the new jobs that are needed. And you with Abudo, you started mapping, assessing, and trying to match the skills gap in a very innovative way. Would you like to introduce this to the audience?
Sure. So we have developed skills technology that powers ecosystems. I think we mentioned in the last talk the need for a platform to combine. I talk about the magic triangle. So you've got the companies, the educators, and government. And our baseline technology is, in this field, the manufacturing skills passport, with the idea that a learner should have a personalized learning journey when they're in higher education right into the workplace. And we should be accrediting skills, not just hard skills, but hard human and transversal skills. And we should use all of that data, real-time skills data, to predict future needs. And I think something Johan was mentioning about these populations globally where the talent is. I'm doing different projects in Africa right now. And again, as you mentioned, Nigeria, super talented workforce. But the process of trying to secure work, whether it's remote or move to Europe, is very challenging. And we see the skills passport as one of those innovations to help people either stay in Africa and remote work or transition to Europe. One piece of technology that we saw that was really needed to be built, not just for our technology, which is being used by the EITs in Europe, was a skills bridge. So as many employers in this audience are probably familiar with, everyone's building their own skills taxonomy, skills ontology, and that's okay, but we don't exchange the data very well. And in America, we have ONET. In Europe, we have ESCO. And so one of the innovations that we've just completed is around a universal skills translator. So not just mitigating or reducing bias in skills matching, but really making skills transferable industry to industry, country to country, where possible.
Yeah, tell us more about this idea of the manufacturing skills passport? Because, you know, the mobility was one of the key to address the skill shortage.
I think there's just a huge opportunity for companies and educational providers and government to launch their own talent and learning marketplaces. And so we see ourselves as one of the technologies that's powering it. So whether it's branded within the name of Manufacturing Skills Passport or Energy Skills Passport, and it enables people to really understand their career pathways. Like they say 70% of people fell into their jobs and the career pathways, and I can be testament to that. And not many people are necessarily happy or realize that the potential they have based on their skill stack. And a bit like the value of your house, there's value to your skills. And really the idea behind a passport is that it's showing people the value of what they have today, especially the underrepresented. I mentioned earlier on, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. You know, how can we really recognize those skills and prior learning? And then once we have a value and a destination point, so within the passport, someone could maybe say, one day, I want to be a sustainability director in manufacturing, and it'll serve up the learning pathways. So for one of our partners right now, EIT Digital, they're pulling in course content from 55 different learning providers. But I, as the individual, say Monica from Italy, who has a goal of being that director, I will be served up just my learning pathway. And every time I complete a course, my passport's auto-certified and the skills taxonomy is updated with hard skills, human skills, transversal skills. And so I'm then matched to the next learning or the next opportunity. And the final piece is, again, I'm very passionate about diversity and inclusion, and being a working mom, there has definitely been times where perhaps I found it challenging to keep up with some peers. And what we did want to do with the passport is, if someone wants to be discovered, when they turn it on for discovery, it's actually anonymous matching at the first stage. So I can't see the age, sex, nationality, ethnicity of the skills match. I can be biased after that stage, but it just kind of shines a light on the potential of people, no matter where they are in the world or what their background is.
Absolutely. We'll have more on this specifically tomorrow at the opening session. But Josefa Villa, I want to go back to the fact that for many countries, we mentioned Italy because we are here, but in general, for some developed economies where the demographic is, blowing against production and the skill gap is really heavy, the idea of many is to transform factories, and you were mentioning this before, from labor-intensive to knowledge-intensive, which is something good to debate here on a stage, in a forum, but then in the real life and on the ground, it's kind of more difficult. So how to approach this?
Well, if you look at ourselves as humans, we are driven by learning, right? Learning and progression, I would say. That's what motivates us. If you feel like we're not learning anything, you're stuck with whatever we have, then I think the motivation maybe goes down a little bit. So learning and progression is part of our lives as humans. I would start with this one. But going back now to the factories, I think the whole idea is that in a manufacturing plant, you have a lot of repetitive tasks, more or less, right? And if you are human, performing those tasks, you are not going to be very motivated over time. So how we can transform this to a kind of a repetitive, labor-intensive to a more knowledge-intensive, where you promote now the ability for the factory workers to really learn and work on the value-added capabilities, more or less. What can I do, for example? Let's pick an example in quality. I was just referring before. Today, you can inspect the quality of a product by visual inspecting. If the assembly was right, there was no scratch or whatever. We can completely replace this with AI today, right? With 10 times more accurate than a human can do. Because a human gets tired of just looking at that thing for a few hours, more or less. But then we can transform the whole quality from a more inspecting to a more understanding the root causes. So this becomes a more forensic work. Why we are having this problem? Is this a problem with the supplier? Is a problem with the person performing these tasks? Is a problem in a given shift or whatever? So we start now motivating people to work more from a kind of value-added capabilities rather than repetitive tasks. That, I think, is one way to approach this and attract young people to go to the manufacturing. It becomes much more appealing environment because, again, going back to my original point, it's ability to learn and progression as well. And I think you mentioned a very good point. What's your progression? How we're going to progress in your career as well, right? Having this kind of learning path would motivate people doing this work.
Yeah, Professor Starr, a question from the audience is considering that there are technical incompetence gaps that should be filled before moving to new technologies and AI in manufacturing. From your point of view, should you follow a disruptive way, so introducing it all at once, or a medium long-term roadmap to introduce this technology in manufacturing industry? Clearly, there's a large debate, on the impact that these will have on employment and so on.
If we're going to have an advanced workforce, and that's especially important in manufacturing, but also in healthcare and also in the military, which is now growing in many countries. I mean, everyone is looking for these people that can be really smart and really innovative and really proactive. But there are basically 4 ways to solve the problem. There's procreation, immigration, education, and automation. I mean, and focusing on education then, to upskill and make people know what they want, what they can do with the technology. That's extremely important. There, I think, both the higher educations, but also everyone needs to be on board here. Everyone needs to be ready to take their responsibility, because this will not be solved by the schools, it will not be solved by the universities, and it will not even be solved by the consultants agency. We have to work together, at least in the regions I mentioned before. Otherwise, it will not work out. And we need to find new ways to also use the other Asians that we talked about before. And I think that it's super important to see how we can use the technology leverage that we have in the European innovative landscape. I mean, a lot of the countries in Europe are seen as very innovative, but it also needs to connect to the use of the technology and the productive use of technology. Otherwise, it will not lead to the productivity gains, it will not lead to the competitiveness that we are reaching for.
Josefa Villa, what do you want to add?
No, I fully agree with you, I would say. And again, depends on the company culture. For example, we are working with a client where the top management is the one educated first. So they understand the power of the technology, so they can motivate the workforce in adopting, they go into the training and everything else. So having this angle of understanding the possibilities there as well. Other point is technology is just a piece of the puzzle. I mean, what you're going to do is it makes a big difference, of course. Different companies can use same technology for a huge perspective, or the other ones can fail with the same technology. Understanding how to apply the technology and what to change, driven by, of course, business outcomes, is extremely important.
Vanessa Wainwright, our understanding is yes, there's concern for the impact of some new technologies on the job market, but at the same time, these technologies are helping you and many others to rethink the job market and how it works. Because one of the main problems is data. You were mentioning data. And here, for example, in the Italian history of active policies for employment, the fact that companies' needs and availability on the job market remains in 2 different universes. That's one of the problems. How are you facing this, and how can technology help you?
I just want to compliment on how you framed this. It's all so well put together. I think leading on from this, it is skills data, and one thing that every university is struggling with right now, doesn't matter what country it is understanding the needs of industry. But industry equally are finding it hard to extract that data, and we probably all rely on that annual report by the Big Four to tell us what are the future skills needs. But actually, when you think about it, the data is there. So if we look at the skills passport as an example, we can track real-time learning. If we run mapping algorithms over all course content, we can track supply. If we run mapping algorithms over all the international job boards, we can track demand. Mm-hmm. And so marrying all those skills data sets now gives us a data feed of real-time skills gap and showing it closing. Like, we've done some really exciting consortium projects in Europe where we're brought in as the skills tech innovation partner. And we can now start identifying skills clusters in European countries, maybe an hour from Milan, where you didn't know that there was talent there. But now you can maybe apply investment strategies around a co-working space or a hub, or the game changer. I went remote working 14 years ago. There's 1 billion people. I know I'm bringing it back to Africa again, but there shouldn't be a skills shortage in the world. There really shouldn't, and there shouldn't be people who are unemployed, and there shouldn't be people that need to be skilled or need their skills recognized. If that is the case, we're failing. And I think from a macro perspective, if all the 3 elements of the triangle could come together, but from an individual's perspective, we could invest and democratize access to learning and opportunities, we'll leave this world a better place for everyone.
Absolutely, that makes a terrible sense, and that's the challenge for the present and the future. At the same time, at least in some countries, including Italy, one of the problems is also the attractiveness of manufacturing. The fact that people do not get that manufacturing has changed, is not what it used to be 30, 40, 50 years ago, and so families are not addressing the youngest generation. Is that common in Europe or in the territory that you serve with your app, and how to handle this?
All the matching that happens now on skills is driven by really human skills. I think traditionally when we were selling opportunities in industries that weren't deemed, no offense to anyone here, sexy, you had to rely on other ways, benefits. But if we can show people how to transfer their skills in and out and up and really drive it through human skills, I actually think manufacturing, having done the research, looking at some of the stuff you've produced in the past as well, I think it's a fantastic career path. But is it a message that gets into the secondary schools? Are we doing enough on STEM or STEAM? Should we have a STEM skills passport for teenagers, for example, to not match for opportunities, but just show them career and learning pathways? What does it look like? And be very easy, like JA Europe do a phenomenal job for entrepreneurs globally. But could we do the same for manufacturing and just show people what's possible in 5, 10, 20 years' time? With the help of
Professor?
AI and Gen AI.
Exactly, it can be a
Professor?
tailored education for.
Yeah.
No, I just want to I mean, Vanessa, you're not doing yourself right because you were part of this Deep Tech Talent initiative that was started in Europe by the European Commission a couple of years ago. And there the JA Europe and others are working hard and to upskill 1 million people in 3 years. And I think we have a smaller experiment in Sweden. We have 13 universities working together just to create modularized manufacturing education that is specifically oriented towards upskilling our Swedish industry. And it's working quite fine. We've been working for a year. We have a couple of thousand people in Swedish industry that have been upskilled on a modular basis. So incrementally helping the companies to raise their skill level, because you cannot ask the companies, especially not the SMEs, to send someone to an education for 6 months. It's not possible. And also the World Economic Forum, I was talking here before, they also have had these efforts to bring together the upskilling. So there are many forces doing the right thing here, but I don't think it's enough to engage the teenagers, actually, because they're too few. So we really need to find some way to motivate the companies to upskill their staff, their present staff. They're all aware of their own products. They have enormous experience in what they need is perhaps some added knowledge about digital twins, AI, whatever, what have you. And I think that is one of the keys for Europe to actually find, and I think it starts at the top. If the CEOs did some upskilling, took some modules on the available upskilling market, I think that would help to motivate the rest of the people in the organization.
That's a great point, José Favilla. One of the questions for you is, how about managing elder people still at work in the manufacturing context?
So what's the...
How to handle the fact that in factories and the shop floor, there's people that's getting older and elder people. How to, upskill, as the professor was mentioning, generation that are already there, but the factory has changed.
It's changed, yeah. Yeah, as we apply this technology, of course, the environment in the factories are going to change quite a lot, right? But one part the companies have to realize is about how we are going to avoid the knowledge leak that's happening. If you have a person working for this as a top SME in that specific process, it's very important to capture the knowledge. Use this person to somehow train the young people as well. But not only training from a people-to-people perspective, but how do we capture the knowledge? How we can train a model, perhaps again AI, to learn about this. What's happening there and how do we capture the knowledge is becoming very, very important to avoid, again, the knowledge leak. And have a very well-defined transition plan. Because we see, I work with many, many clients in Japan, for example, and they're facing a massive work in terms of people retiring and not being able to bring the expertise. So we did a project a few years ago where we tried to use these people to really somehow feed the AI system to capture their knowledge and be able to somehow be used by the young engineers to somehow expedite their learning process in performing this similar task as well.
Yeah, okay. Recommendation number 1 of the report today was embrace change. But the question, José Favilla, for you is how do you manage people that resist change, which is natural because change is painful, change is difficult.
Well, I think we as humans, we don't like change sometimes because we want to get a more stable process.
We love to discuss change when it's about everyone else, but when it comes to us, it's more difficult.
But needs to bring in a perspective, what's in there for you when you change. A motivation factor becomes very, very important. It's not change for change, but changing to grow, more or less. If we can come up with a perspective for the person that's going to go through the changes, becoming very, very important to drive the motivation part.
Absolutely. What's your take on this?
Well, I think when you look at your children, right, it's not there you have some change resistance in many ways, but you can get the right motivation. It's very easy to get the young people to change. And then when going to school, the first day is quite resistant, but maybe when you realize all the friends that you meet there and all the things that you learn and all the things that you can use with this knowledge, then it becomes more of a natural thing to do. So I still, coming back to this, I think it starts at the top. I mean, if we cannot have our CTOs and CEOs upskilling, then why should the staff do it?
Vanessa Wainwright, you were mentioning before women participation in manufacturing, and we know that it's still very limited, and manufacturing could benefit from an increase in this kind of number of women in manufacturing. Tomorrow morning, we will start with that with Cristina Ollón. I would like to understand your point of view. So what can be done to get more women in manufacturing?
I've worked in recruitment and talent acquisition and learning for 22 years, and I think it has always and will continue to be for a while challenging. I don't think how we currently recruit works in the mainstream. I think the CV is dead. I think job boards have too much bias. I don't think the words necessarily appeal to a diverse and inclusive audience. I don't think we recognize skills in the way we should. And so they all create small barriers to diverse talent coming through. Then, when you're in the workplace, let's face it, I think to get promoted, it still is pretty much based on the way it used to be, which is tenure or patting someone on the shoulder and saying, notice me. So I think if we can look at a more inclusive way for people to have their skills recognized, and I'm not just talking about skills acquisition in the workplace, like many of us have acquired skills outside of the workplace, is your employer recognizing them? And then being discovered in an inclusive process. I talked about like anonymous matching. Imagine the C-suite at the end of the year looking at how many internal matches happened, how many were diverse, and then maybe how little got promoted. Now you can laser in on where the problem is. But it starts with, on the way in, are we getting enough diverse talent coming in? And if not, what's our communication? And are we just focusing on hard skill promotion, or are we really saying you can come from multiple industries into manufacturing now as a result of AI? And here's how. And again, don't rely on the candidate having to go onto Google and search. Make these pathways easy for them to do a personality assessment, upload their hard skills education, and boom, 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 oh wow, I could be on 120 grand, 4 years' time in manufacturing, and I'm going to go in an inclusive recruitment process. I think that's how we start the change.
All right, that's a very good point. Now we have to wrap it up a bit. Josefa Villa, let's give a final statement for companies, not just large companies, but again, SMEs. We understand that human capital today is the scarcest capital, also versus financial or technological capital, and the competition, especially when it comes to small and medium companies, is really hard on that. How to make your company more attractive for the most skilled people, and how to retain talent once you get them on board?
Well, I think a company first has to better marketing themselves in terms of as an environment for come to learn and grow, more or less. Because that's, I think, as I was saying, this is a major, in my view, as a motivation factor for us as humans. Coming to a place where I have a perspective to learn and I have a perspective to grow. That would be the number one angle I would approach in order to make this more appealing for the workforce to come and enjoy and engage in the manufacturing as well, right? I think it's about a perception, external perception, but how we can change this perception about providing the right marketing perspective as well, right? Another point that I like a lot, the leadership angle as well, that I think you mentioned, needs to come from top down. Again, the learning part is going to happen across the entire organization. How do you make this visible externally to some extent to drive, again, the motivation for people to join your company?
Professor Stare?
I think that what the small and medium-sized enterprises share is the lack of big capital, and they cannot allocate big resources, so it needs to be incremental in a sense. And there are many ways to do that. When you buy equipment, you do that incrementally. You can also add skills incrementally, but you can also with the immigration part, there is a virtual immigration. You can actually hire a workforce from some other parts of the world where they have abundance of workforce. So there are different ways of adding to staff, I think, using the new technologies that's increasingly becoming more and more interesting. But I think that if you look at the Coursera, which has the largest amount of courses, when we talk to them, they say, well, a lot of people come to us and they want these technology courses. They want to learn about AI, they want to learn about editing, whatever. But if you look at the World Economic Forum's wish list from the companies, what kind of skills they want with the new employees, it's not technology skills, it's analytical, critical thinking, whatever, analysis, project management, things that you cannot really learn in a course like that. So you need to see how can you transfer that kind of knowledge to an SME without disrupting their core business. And that in many ways, I think that the technology is helping us, then the kind of AI and generative AI can do that as well.
Vanessa Wainwright, your takeaway.
I think in the earlier talk, it was mentioned about collaboration. And I would just say to everyone in this room today, and Johanna said about finance, they've just appointed someone new in the European Commission with a focus on education and skills, and there is a lot of funding coming through. So if you're sitting in the audience now and you're thinking, I have an idea on how to close the skills gap, it's literally about connecting and collaborating. And I'm always very happy to have a conversation, and I think everyone up here is too. But that's how we make a change, coming together.
Absolutely. So thanks for the conversation. Really, really interesting. Thanks again. And a round of applause to our speakers. We'll discuss again tomorrow human capital. We'll start talking about gender participation into the manufacturing with Cristina Oyon at 9:30. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining World Manufacturing Forum. Thank you.